Previously on Pandemi Lovato News, there is still an ongoing pandemic with COVID, and we are getting close to a point where the bird flu is going to be communicable between human individuals, which is going to be a potential like major catastrophe because the mortality rate for that particular virus when it has previously come into contact with humans is much higher than the rate of mortality with COVID. Of course, the greater problem with COVID is the, whole permanent disability aspect of it. You have a roughly like 10% chance of having a long-term or permanent effect from COVID the first time you catch it. And the second time it's closer to 20%. So every time you catch COVID, you're like increasing the risk of you having a permanent or long-term, some kind of disability or damage to your body, right? So previously, there have been issues where people are claiming, oh, masks don't even work. How could you suggest that we wear a mask? It doesn't even work. Because previously, the main study that people have been citing on that, there's a couple difficulties. First of all, it's not possible for the people conducting the study to be with you every moment of the day to make sure you are or are not actually wearing the mask. If you are wearing a mask most of the day at work, and then you pull it down to eat or drink or whatever, then that is not effective use of the mask. Oh my God, the hiccups. Why? So, and also the previous main study that people were talking about on this it was basically treating surgical masks the same as like an N95 respirator. So I don't know if you know the difference, but like N95 respirators or even KN95 respirators, they create a seal. The ones that I buy have a nice rubber seal up top here. So they seal rubber up here and they come all the way back here and they hug your whole face. It's a seal. Now, it might not be the most sealed seal that ever sealed, but it is better than the loose surgical masks, like the blue masks that you see, like where it's like they might have a little piece of metal right here that bends, but it's like loose on your face, and it's especially loose around the sides right here. Yeah, I buy 3M brand. They start flat and you unfold them and they have I'm serious about my respirators. So, I go to the gym and work out 4 days a week, and I go to the grocery store and stuff. Like, I get high quality masks, and I think that that's what everyone should do. I get high quality, like, respirators. So if you're studying the efficacy of masking, first of all, like making sure that the people are actually using the mask in all situations where it should be done, like anytime you're indoors and anytime you're in a crowded outdoor space. Frankly, even if you're just outdoors in general, my personal opinion is that you probably don't want to risk the exposure of even walking past a person on the sidewalk, or, if you live in an apartment building where you go indoors and you're in these hallways to get to your apartment door, I think you should wear a mask in that situation as well, because the air is stagnant, and if somebody had been breathing out the virus, you could get sick, So now we do actually have a review that is showing, in fact, which this is like the dumbest question I feel like we've ever had to answer. Like, does wearing a rated N95 prevent you from catching COVID? Like, did you really need a study to tell you that, the mask that's rated to prevent 95% of particulates from exiting it or entering it is like, what? Yeah, this truly is germ theory of disease still extant, still God. Anyway, so we're looking at this article study. When a Texan farm worker caught bird flu from cattle recently, there was social media abuzz with rumors because while bird flu is not a human pandemic, scientists and policymakers the world over are keen to prepare as best they can for when such a pandemic emerges, which is a tricky task given that science is messy, policy must be pragmatic, and people's values don't always align. Time for masks to enter the chat. At the beginning of a pandemic caused by a novel or newly mutated virus, there may be no vaccine, no firm knowledge about how bad things will get, and no specific treatment. And slowing down transmission until more is known will be critical. Right. If bird flu starts spreading from person to person, we do not have a vaccine for that, and it will take time to develop a vaccine. So it's critical critical that we reduce the spread. Getting most people to wear a mask could nip the outbreak in the bud, preventing a pandemic entirely or lessening its impact. Wearing a mask is inconvenient. I don't know, I disagree with that for the most part, but it's not as inconvenient as lockdowns. You know, and that's the thing too. You can still go do things. You can still go out in the world and go to the grocery store and go to the gym. Like, you can still do all those things. Just wear a goddamn respirator. Life doesn't have to end. Can you maybe wait like 6 months for your next haircut, or like wear the mask and like hold it on your face while the person is cutting your hair? Like, you don't need to go and eat at a restaurant. It's not necessary. Hey, you should like, comment, and subscribe. And you can hit up the Patreon or maybe buy one of these hoodies that I'm wearing because it's good merch. Do it. Do it for the cat. Do it. So, you know, answering the question though, do masks work? There's a review of masks and respirators that looked only at clinical trials, concluded that there was not enough evidence to assess whether mask wearing reduces the risk. However, we disagree with that. Yes, the review by the not-for-profit Cochrane collaboration failed to influence recent guidance issued by the CDC in response to the troubling news of bird flu transmission to humans. The CDC recommended well-fitting respirators, along with overalls and safety goggles for anyone working with potentially infected cattle until the bird flu threat subsides. I was reading someone who is an expert on bird flu who was saying that because we don't have absolute confirmation, like, cows are sick with bird flu right now, which means, and for some reason there's a lot of it in their mammaries, so there is evidence of bird flu in raw milk, and we don't have enough evidence to say we know for sure that pasteurization can stop the, you know, the bird flu in the milk from being active virus, you know? So my family is on oat milk right now. We've switched off cow milk for the time being until we know for sure that pasteurization, or, you know, maybe we need to increase and pasteurize twice or for twice as long in order to make sure that we're killing off this virus, because we don't know for sure at this point that there is, like, that it's safe, you know? So that's, like, on top of everything else, on top of the masks thing, also be cautious and aware with your dairy consumption at this time. Yeah, the reaction to masks is not super surprising given the reaction doctors had when people suggested washing their hands between handling corpses and then women giving birth. Yeah, there was resistance in the medical community to washing hands. And I think it was actually a transgender doctor. I cannot remember his name off the top right now, but there was a doctor who suggested we start washing our hands, and there was resistance, and he was ridiculed. And then it became normalized to wash your hands in between patients. And then the idea that you should wear gloves, like latex gloves, when touching a patient, that was also something that the medical community had resistance to. Even though it seems very obvious to us today, it wasn't until the HIV epidemic that doctors started wearing masks to protect themselves from patients, that now it is just normalized. If you touch a patient at all, you wear gloves and you wash your hands after, you know? So obviously there is always this resistance for some reason to do things more safely. But yeah, don't drink raw milk, period. No, it was not James Berry, not the one who pushed for hand washing. Okay. I thought that it was, but that's my bad. I misremembered. But James Berry was who I was thinking of, so thank you. So yeah, the CDC had recommended that well-fitting respirators could prevent the spread of bird flu. And there's a question of, like, is this latest guidance based on sound evidence? And according to this review of the evidence, yes, much like the Cochrane team, we pooled data from randomized controlled trials, RCTs, and analyzed the combined data in what is called a meta-analysis. Unlike the Cochrane team, we also examined non-RCT evidence, including dozens of laboratory studies, which did show that respiratory infections, including the common cold, COVID, flu, measles, and tuberculosis, spread mainly through the air. Laboratory evidence showed that different mask materials are better or worse at filtering tiny particles and more or less breathable, especially when damp. This explains why a cloth or paper mask that has become soggy from the moisture in exhaled air gets harder to breathe through and may be less protective. Whereas medical masks are typically tied loosely around the face, therefore air can bypass the filter. Respirators fit snugly and, if worn at work, must be fit tested to make sure that all air inhaled or exhaled passes through a high-grade filter. Now, most people are not going to do fit tests, but that doesn't mean that wearing a respirator is not effective. It just means that if you're not literally doing a fit test, then, okay, it might not be providing you all the protection that it could. But wearing a respirator is still more effective than wearing a surgical mask. And, I mean, either of those options is probably, doing more for you than not wearing a mask at all. I personally am not going to suggest that you wear blue surgical masks or any surgical mask. I don't think that those are effective at preventing you from catching COVID, right? Like, I don't think that that's going to help you. But a respirator, like an N95, will. All this non-RCT evidence is crucially important for the design of the RCT tests. Because respiratory viruses float in the air, to be optimally effective, a mask must be made of high filtration material and must be fit closely. It should not be removed while indoors, or the person will immediately be exposed to infectious particles in the air. You know, COVID is not gonna I'm not gonna go near you while you take a drink of your drink, you know? Like, ooh, let me pull down my masks and take a sip of my mimosa. Like, no, leave it on. And also, don't touch it. Like, don't touch the outside of your mask if at all possible. You should handle your mask by the earpiece parts and wash your hands after you touch them, because obviously, like, if you're breathing in, you're sucking virus toward your face, and then it can stick to the mask. And then if you touch the mask and then you don't wash your hands and you start touching your face, like, okay, congratulations, you've just put COVID all over your face. Like, chill out, okay? It also follows that we should not expect RCTs of badly designed masks, masks that don't fit, or masks that are worn only some of the time to show any reduced transmission. Neither should we expect mere advice to wear masks to have any effect unless that advice is actually followed. Finally, when comparing respirators with masks in places where there is a high risk of infection, such as a hospital, the respirator needs to be worn continuously until the person leaves the building, not just popped on occasionally when doing so-called aerosol-generating procedures, such as intubating a patient. If we take these crucial details of RCT design into account, rather than just comparing any masks on, masks off experiments, we find that masks are effective and respirators even more effective in reducing the spread of respiratory disease. We can also explain why some previous reviews appeared to show that this isn't the case, because most of these previous studies of mask wearing by the public were actually trials of advice to wear masks. In both the RCTs and observational studies, such as real-world experiments, there was a dose-response effect, i.e., the more people wore their masks, the more effective the masks turned out to be. And when there is a looming pandemic, people do tend to wear their masks. So the bottom line here is that yes, we found that masks do protect in the community, and N95 respirators particularly, which are masks made using higher grade filtration material designed to fit closely around the face to protect against airborne contaminants, are superior to masks in healthcare workers, especially when respirators were worn continuously at work. Non-RCT evidence also shows that masks work and respirators work better. So of course, yeah, we can hope that we're not heading for another pandemic, but as we're contemplating that possibility and the FDA and the CDC are preparing for a new outbreak of bird flu, then yeah, the bottom line is masks work, and we do that along with improving indoor air quality and avoiding crowded, underventilated spaces. They will provide the best means of avoiding catching a respiratory infection. And the findings support previous evidence that you should not just wear any old mask, but wear the best mask available. The 3M masks that I buy are expensive because it's like 40 some odd dollars for a pack of like 25 of them. I can't remember what the box size is. You don't have to necessarily get rid of it at the end of every day. Like, I will use the same mask going to the gym for several weeks until the elastic starts to be like loose enough that I don't feel like it has a firm enough fit, you know? The less you put on and take off your mask, the longer that elastic is gonna remain like intact. So I'm not like a medical professional or anything. I'm just saying, like, this is what I do. I put on the mask and then I go into the gym for an hour and then I take off the mask and I sanitize my hands. And And I do the same thing. I go to the grocery store, I put on that mask, and I go to the grocery store, and I have not gotten COVID from those daily activities. I believe that I did get the Eris strain of COVID last year at an outdoor event when I was near someone who was sick. Outdoors. I believe I caught COVID. So I didn't end up testing because I was like, oh, it's just allergies. I'm spending a lot of time outside right now. Dumb decision. Test if you're symptomatic. But yeah, like I have not gotten sick from, again, I go to the gym. People are respirating a lot in the gym. I think that in the course of me going to the gym regularly for the last couple of years, I have seen another person wearing a mask twice. Once he ended up taking it off to drink water. And then the most recent one was a cloth mask. But I was still like, you know, what's up? Good to see you wearing a mask. Like, just gave the dude a little, like, acknowledgement. Because, yeah, like, why would you risk getting sick over and over again? Why would you risk spreading your sickness? I'm constantly hearing people clearing their throats or coughing or sneezing even in the gym. And, you know, one-way masking is not perfect. An N95 is meant to filter out 95% of particles and not 100% of particles. Like there are more effective masks, respirators. Like the P100 is more effective than an N95, but still, like I can buy a 20-pack, 25-pack of N95s for 40 some odd dollars, and it lasts at least a month, if not longer. So it is obvious to anyone with a brain, but now we have data, if you need to look at the data, to say, look, this is the move. This is the correct thing to do. My brain's making the analogy with this whole mask thing that it's the difference between putting a condom on properly or over your balls. Yeah, like if you wear a mask and it like drifts down below your nose, or if you take it off to drink, or if it's really loose fitting on you, like obviously it's not a prophylactic. It's not an appropriate barrier. Wearing masks has been obvious to me considering how other countries in the East wear masks in public and it's just considered a normal practice. Yeah, if you're on public transit and you're like in China or Japan, if you have sniffles or allergy or whatever, like it's considered polite to wear a mask. And they're usually wearing like surgical masks, but that is like, it's keeping most of your air, it's keeping a lot of your air in your face. So like you're not breathing out and expelling as high of a volume of virus directly into other people's faces, you know? Like, why is this not normalized? Like, this is part of what I dislike about American culture is that it's highly individualized. Like, well, I have the right to go out and cough and, like, not cover my face. Like, actually, you have an obligation. Like, public health means public health. There is no public health if you think an individual right to infect other people exists. Like, you don't have a right to infect other people. In fact, I was Googling this recently. So I don't know if you've ever considered spitting on someone. Like, it's assault. You know, if you spray someone with water and they didn't want to be sprayed with water, that's assault, legally speaking. Spitting on someone is assault. Like having sex with someone when you know you have HIV and you don't tell them, like that's considered a form of assault. Coughing on someone is also assault. And now in most places you have a duty to retreat. So like if you're wearing a mask and someone goes out of their way to cough on you, your first obligation is to move away, but that's assault and you can have them charged for it. And you have a right to defend yourself using proportional force. So if someone coughs on you and you move away and they continue following you and coughing on you, you have the right to shove them or whatever. Like you have the right to physically defend yourself because that is assault. Yeah, here in the US, we've got the freedom to be as gross and obnoxious as possible. Yeah. And like they don't have to be infected for you to feel like your life is in danger and react proportionately, to be clear. Even if they were tested and it turned out they were not positive for COVID, it's like if someone was brandishing a weapon at you and it wasn't loaded, but you didn't know that it wasn't loaded, like you still have the right to defend yourself because there is a reasonable understanding that your life could be at risk, right? Yeah, imagine if someone had smallpox on a handkerchief and started like shoving it in people's faces, you know? You're deliberately trying to cause alarm to me and potentially infect me. And like, yeah, if you can say I had a reasonable expectation that I could be harmed seriously by this person's action. Like someone spitting on you is a form of assault. So is coughing directly in someone's face. Unfortunately, it was against the rules for me to wear a face covering at school. So I would get told to remove them whenever I wore a mask while sick. Wow. This is why I hate public schools. Like, or I guess maybe you're in college, I don't know. But like, I don't care. Like, I don't care if it's against your policy for me to wear a face covering. Like, if you had a student who had cancer, would that student with a severely compromised immune system not be allowed to wear a mask? Like, God, people just be power tripping for no reason. Jesus Christ. And I'm pretty sure that's an ADA violation, but whatever. And there are other reasons to wear a fitted respirator as well. Allergies. If you wear a respirator outside, it will dramatically reduce your allergy symptoms. And also, like, pollution is on the rise. Wildfires are on the rise. You know, checking the air. If you live in a city, you've got pollution. If you live anywhere where there's wildfires, you know, there are, for some people, like, there's like a wildfire season every year. Like, I know folks up in the Pacific Northwest have mentioned to me before that, like, yeah, every year in August, it just is wildfire season and there's smoke everywhere. Smoke can kill you, like, and can cause cancer, you know, if you're breathing it in all the time like that. Wildfire smoke. So there are more reasons besides just COVID and bird flu to wear a fitted respirator. It's probably just the best call to just anytime you leave your house, just be wearing a mask. Just point blank, period. And if you wear one all the time, then it doesn't matter what circumstances. You know, there are people who are like, oh, I will wear a mask if I'm symptomatic. But you can still spread stuff even if you don't have symptoms. And also, what are you considering symptoms? Are you testing for COVID and flu when your quote-unquote allergies start to get bad? Yeah, it makes sense if you're like, let's not wear a Halloween mask. But for you to, like, for all face coverings to include, like, a medical respirator, whatever, don't even get me started. I hate public schools. The concept of public schools is good. The way that we do it right now sucks so bad. But yeah, just make it a habit. Every time you're outside, every time you go anywhere, just wear a respirator. Like, keep it simple, keep it moving. Thank you so much to all of my patrons, especially Tiago Nascimento, Mersh Rolvog, Michelle Frateroli, Amanda B., Michelle Winter, Wellington Marcus, Danielle McDonald, DZXN, Suzanne Maynard, Spooky Heather Sylvia, Ella V. Nobody, Pastel Infinity, Jamie Jam, Nova, Sojo, Elizabeth Bartell, Kevin Young, Athiette, Celeste, Desi Quiche, Liam Hodgson, Mr. Atheist, and Jack.